I do want to drill down on the thing that your clip about preparation, because I do think it is useful to people beyond that specific job, where you talked about doing a lot of preparation and then eventually recognizing that you weren't doing the kind of preparation that you actually needed in the heat of the moment when the adrenaline was hitting. So could you perhaps recapitulate that for us?
I think, I mean, the people who work in education would have a much better thorough answer than this. And, people say it all the time, like, oh man, I wish that they just taught basic finance in high school or, whatever the case is. But to me, one of the most useful skills to people would be at a young age, understanding how they learn. Somebody asked me the other day, are you a visual learner? I was like, I'm not sure. I guess sometimes maybe. I didn't really have an answer because I don't know how to put a label on how I've learned to learn. My wife is a dietitian, and she likes to say, when people say like, oh, should I eat this way or eat that way? She says, every body is different. And, I'm sure there are people that have ways that have studied how we can efficiently learn, but every person maybe takes it in a little differently. And for me, I had to figure out, to what you're getting at, is that the way I was preparing was I did everything I thought I was supposed to be doing, trying to capture every piece of information that existed. So if a game is on Saturday, starting the previous Sunday, I am just everything, every stat, every hometown, every parent's name, every story you can find, everything. And at the end of it, I'd feel very proud of be up till 3 a.m., 2 a.m., right? Just like, and at the end of it, I'd be like, look at this collection of beautifully organized, color-coded information. And then the game would start, and I had no system for like sifting it or understanding in a moment, oh, there was that thing about Ethan. What was that thing? And I've got like 8 bullet points in size 6 font, and now I'm not paying attention, right? So then what would happen is I just wouldn't use that stuff, which is fine. Like most stuff should end up on the cutting room floor anyway. But it took me a while to realize Jerry Seinfeld always has this joke that I think applies, where he does this bit about how nighttime Jerry would really screw morning Jerry. Nighttime Jerry stays up till midnight, and then morning Jerry pays the price. And for me, it was like in the moment broadcasting version of myself needed the other version of myself that had 4 days, 5 days, 6 days to prepare to help that version when, quote unquote, the bullets are flying and I need to digest the information quickly. And so it meant 2 things for me. It meant really thinking about how this information was going to be used. How was I going to say it? What are the situations where I would use it? And then these are really fundamental things when you break it down. And then it meant reviewing it. So what I do now, in what is a very unfinished and still evolving system, is like I have my what's called my spotting board. It's big. It's big. I flip it. Both teams, offense at the top, defense at the bottom. I should have brought you one. Offense top, defense at the bottom. Then you flip it. It's the other offense and the other defense. And there's a lot going on it, but and then I will go through it, right? I will highlight. Okay, what really, as I'm sitting here now, right before the game, what really feels useful? What really feels right? What really should I use? What do I have to get in? You're just trying not to think as much. Yeah. And you just want to put yourself, like anything, like anybody who trains for anything would tell you, you're just trying to put yourself in a position to react. So, it's really not that different than anything else, but it sounds stupid. It took me a while to figure that out for myself.
Yeah. Thinking is the enemy. And, a few weeks ago, it was funny. I think I went on the Simmons podcast the day before we went golfing, and that was a situation where I got the bat signal that I was going on about an hour or two before it happened. And it was on all this complex sports rights negotiation stuff, which I write about and I follow. So there's this backlog of info, but you also know that other people follow it in this granular way and you don't want to screw things up. And I called up a source of mine who follows all of that really well. And I said, hey, we need to have a talk. I'm about to do this podcast. Let's go over some things. And I had some things we wanted to go over. And we went over them. And then I did the podcast. And I called him up and I said, thank you so much. This was after it was already out and he had listened to the podcast. I said, thank you so much. You saved my ass. And he said, well, you're welcome, but you didn't use anything that I told you. And I said, I know, but I needed to go over those things to feel comfortable. I needed to go into that situation knowing that I had checked off those boxes, that I wouldn't wind up in a territory where I felt lost. If I had known that there was this territory out there that I could get lost in, that I'm on that podcast and I'm thinking about that, and that's impacting everything else. Being able to just go, okay, I covered this. If we go into that territory, I know what we're going to discuss. That was, I think, essential. So it's funny, you want to prepare in this way that's as comprehensive as the notes you used to have, but not necessarily have that all in front of you when you're doing the thing.
Yeah, I was just talking to a buddy about this yesterday. He had recently done something, a project with someone who has been in the spotlight half their lives and is very smart. And this guy that I was talking to is also very smart. And he said, it was crazy. When it came time to get on camera and present this thing we're working on, I know it better than he does, but he was better at communicating it than me. Yeah. And it was frustrating. Like, it's bullshit. Like, kind of like they're boys, but he's like, it's kind of bullshit. Mm-hmm. And I said, well, did you practice? He's like, well, no. Mm-hmm. I said, well, this guy has been leading people and talking to people from the spotlight and communicating for half of his life. And I do think there's a lot of things in our lives that if you treated it like sports and you just practice it, not all the time, but a few times, you'd be better at it. So what I told him is, the next time you do it, you got to, not to get into the whole thing they're doing, but your own producer is going to ask you some questions that you need to answer to make this kind of highlight video to show people, hey, this is what our product does. I said, what those questions are going to be. So answer them, watch yourself. You will be your harshest. You will be your best critic. You'll know that I'm not saying what I'm trying to say. And then you just do it and do it and do it and do it. And it's not so that you then repeat the perfect answer. It's so that you yourself know the core of what you're trying to say so well that the only thing you say is your headline or I said, think of it either as like a newspaper headline or like an elevator pitch. I know if I practice something and it's 30 words, I can get it to 25 and then I can get it to 20 and then I can get it to 15. And the comparison I gave him is when you do the open in television, the first time you come on camera. Hi, everybody. Welcome. Along with Ethan, I'm Guy. Here's the game we have today. You'll know going in because of a conversation with your analyst and your producer what you are we're going to do a little breakdown on the 49ers offense. Then we're going to go do a breakdown on the best defensive player on the other team, Anthony Mays, the key linebacker. We got to watch for him, blah, blah, blah. So what I do is I will write that out. Like I will write it out the way that if I could say it perfectly, and then I'll be changing it and scratching it and changing it and scratching it. And then this is like the morning of the game in the hotel. Then I'll practice it and practice it and practice it and practice it and practice it. And as you're doing it, you're like, oh, that word's not good, or that's a silly way of saying it, or whatever. And then I can repeat it back without even looking at this little, my little index card. And then what's the best part is that I'm not actually repeating what I wrote down verbatim once I actually get on camera. I just know it's not about getting the words right. It's about really understanding exactly what is it that I need to communicate in how few words. Because I got like 8 seconds. I don't want the guy standing there just looking at the camera next to me for 15 seconds. You get so aware of the difference between 4 seconds and 8 seconds, 12 seconds. And then it's just to what you said, Ethan. Now I am free because I know exactly. There is no doubt in my mind. If something goes wrong or something changes, the producer at the last second says, let's do this instead of that. Fine. Because it is so ingrained in my brain exactly what we want to say, what I want to say. Not how I'm going to say it, but just where I'm going. Where am I going? And, I think there's so many things like that. If you just practiced it a couple times, if you watched yourself say it and you went, oh, that is not what I'm trying to say, actually, or there's a better way to say it. But it feels weird. It feels weird to practice stuff that, you think, and I used to deal with this too. Like, oh, that guy just doesn't look like he tries. I'm going to try and do it that way. I'll add one more thing. I always thought it was cheating to do that, what I just described. I thought it was like a lesser art form if I didn't totally wing it.
Yeah.
Oh, well, Costas doesn't use a notepad, And then somebody showed me, I saw a photo or I watched it. I don't remember how I saw it, of Keith Jackson. Maybe I read it. Like Keith Jackson would write it down on a yellow notepad. And I thought, well, shit, if Keith Jackson can prepare, then maybe it's not cheating to actually think of what you're going to say ahead of time.